Hi Kiwi and welcome back to another episode of Hades 1. Here is our mirror setup for the day. Now, full disclosure, I am recording this in post. This was meant to just be kind of a litmus test of a Demeter Dash only run, but it ended up going so well that I wanted to upload it. We're going to be taking a 19 heat bounty, but as you'll see in a moment, Knucklehead Jeff kind of missed the fact that he drops his heat to 18, and so he doesn't actually get his bounty. We're going to max out jury summons, take 3 levels of extreme measures, 1 level of hard labor, I think I ended up, or was it lasting consequences? It was lasting consequences, maxing out heightened security, middle management, benefits package, and 3 levels of extreme measures for an 18 heat run because this Knucklehead can't read or comprehend numbers.
Waste not your time, though it is limitless. Busy yourself in doing things of use. Learn. Learn how to learn. I cannot teach you everything myself.
The concept of learning how to learn is so important to me, and it's just not something that is always easy to teach. Alright, so we're starting with Demeter.
Your foe shall more than catch cold by the time we're through. Don't you agree, young sprout?
Yeah, they're probably going to die of old age, let's be honest. More on that in a second. You'll see why. This dash-only run starts off really rough. We get a 15 base damage, which means at most we are doing 45 damage per hit until you account for Ruthless Reflex. So the reason why we take Ruthless Reflex instead of Greater Reflex, we sacrifice a dash, which could in theory mean more damage for us, but Ruthless Reflex actually boosts our early game because it does affect the dash damage. It's a universal steroid. More importantly for me though, it makes it so I don't get hit nearly as often because I seem to be extremely prone to just taking hits when I'm doing dash only runs. That 50% dodge chance comes in huge and saves my butt more times than I can count. So reason why I'm recording this in post, I didn't expect to upload this episode. It just went really well, so I wanted to upload it. The plan was I made a copy of my main save file and I was just gonna do a litmus test of this run to kind of get a concept of like how do I play it. And then while I was waiting for Kiwi, who was in the shower, once she got out, I was going to end the run and go to bed. But as you'll see, this run goes pretty well, all things considered. Demeter's dash is definitely one of the weakest dashes, I would say. I feel that probably the only dash that'll be rougher than this is Aphrodite, because Aphrodite really just offers nothing to our benefit. And you'll see why when I eventually do that run. I have not done an Aphrodite dash only run, but I am lamenting the idea of doing it at some point. The boons that we're going to be hunting for on this run, of course, Demeter's Dash is going to be the crutch of our build because let's talk about the rules of the run first, and then we'll talk about what boons we want actually. So all of our damage has to come from us pressing the dash button. The only exception are revenge boons. Revenge boons are allowed, but I cannot get Ares duo boon with Zeus. So there's no Vengeful Mood buff, because that just kind of trivializes the run. We want to emphasize the strength of the dash and building around the dash, not a duo boon that can work with any build. Chthonic keepsakes are allowed, so I will summon Boldy as I see fit. I mean, you can't make an argument that Boldy is going to be the thing that carried the run. He may help us survive in a room, but that's about the extent of it. I think if you're doing a dash only run, you're going to prove the fact that your dash is the core of your damage, and 5 uses of Boldy is not going to change that. So those are the main rules. Everything else is just kind of anything goes. Take whatever boons you want or whatever makes sense to keep you alive or deal as much damage as possible. And with that in mind, the boons that we want here, we don't get what we're looking for from Demeter, so I actually do want to reroll here, I believe. What I'm looking for is specifically 2 of her tier 2 boons. Killing Freeze, when all foes are chill afflicted, they are 10% slower in decay. If we can get her legendary, that will be amazing because it makes enemies die at 10% HP. The reason why I do take Ravenous Will here is because it is a prerequisite for her legendary. But the other boons we're looking for are Killing Freeze. Her Revenge boon is fine. And then I forget if it's Snowburst. I didn't look for the name when we were going through the codex there, but we're looking for the boon that when an enemy reaches 10 stacks of chilled, they explode and deal chilled damage to each other. And that is actually going to be the main source of our damage in this build, not the dash itself. Getting 10 stacks of chilled, that bursting effect actually does a fair bit of damage. At base, I believe it's about 80 damage. It's still not an amazing amount of damage, but it is damage. Other boons that we're going to be looking for. Zeus is always important for a dash-only run because he offers his tier 2 boon, Lightning Reflexes, which when you do a perfect dodge, you drop a lightning bolt, and then that can let us get jolted, double strike, his legendary, And also his duo with, if we get one of his core boons, we can also set up for his duo with Demeter, Cold Fusion, which means that our jolted effects will stay on enemies for 10 seconds instead of getting cleared every time they attack. And those are going to be the main sources of our damage. Again, if we can get Demeter's legendary, that means every enemy effectively has 10% less HP. And then killing freeze, as long as every enemy in the room is applied, has a stack of chilled on them, they are going to take damage over time, which also helps our overall DPS. So that's kind of the core of the build. Of course, if we can get Artemis for crit chance from pressure points, that's something. It's not amazing, but it does help. And beyond that, honestly, it's just a matter of getting whatever gods can give us secondary effects that benefit our overall damage. Gods like Dionysus are decent because Strong Drink is a universal damage buff. Beyond that, there's not much that Dionysus offers. Athena can increase our survivability and give us death defiances if the run goes south. Ares doesn't really offer much, unfortunately, so I wouldn't take him if I had a choice. So really, Athena and Dionysus are probably the other two gods aside from Zeus and Artemis that I think would be reasonable for this. Poseidon really offers nothing other than a reliable way to heal with Sunken Treasure. But beyond that, he's kind of useless. But unfortunately, we don't get really a choice about this, so I go looking in the codex to decide, is there anything from Poseidon that would actually be useful here, and come to the conclusion that literally the only thing that really benefits me is Boiling Point for increased God Gauge, but I'm not using my God Gauge, so it's useless actually. Really, the only thing that he can give is possibly duo boons. If we got his duo with Aphrodite, we could get more palm levels that could affect our dash. Exclusive access was appealing because, again, I mentioned Dionysus isn't a terrible option for this. Since I was locked into Poseidon anyway, I decided to buy his boons here. It literally didn't matter what I picked here, so as long as I didn't take Tidal Dash, I ended up going with the aid because maybe I can sell it for coin later, and I take the HP because we need survivability on this sort of run. But those are the thoughts that are kind of going into this run in terms of how I want to build. Of course, when we see Hermes, the main thing we want is more dashes, and beyond that, Bad News could be decent for a 50% damage steroid. If you don't know, Bad News, though it does say it only works on enemy, it only affects your cast damage, Bad News is a universal damage steroid.
Hey, what's going on?
This was the exact moment when I realized I did not bring Boldy. I brought Skelly, which actually was kind of helpful because Skelly distracts enemies and lets me just kind of stack dashes on them. The biggest issue with the sneak is that whenever it teleports, just like Hades, it clears all status ailments on it, so it's really frustrating. You cannot kill this thing quickly with a Demeter dash. The other thing to note about Demeter's dash specifically is it's basically a projectile. When you dash forward, it shoots a linear projectile ahead of you and leaves a little chilling field that can apply multiple stacks of chill, I believe. I may be mistaken about that. I still don't fully understand how Demeter dash works, but at the very least, it is a projectile. So you're going to see I constantly kind of dash forward, then walk backwards and dash forward again, and that's going to be the main movement tech I have to reliably deal my damage. I'm basically running a weird projectile build that still works at point blank, mind you, at melee range. It's just not as reliable, and you're more likely going to get hit because you're running close range.
Ahoy, little Hades, it is I, the greatest of your uncles, here to aid you in your daringest escape attempt. And I do admire your persistence.
The daringest escape attempt. Sure, uncle. All right, so here, it doesn't really matter what we take. So I probably take Hydraulic Might, yeah, because I can sell that. It's an epic tier, it'll sell for more. And then I'm going to go for the Palm, of course, because that can potentially give us more damage on the dash until we get some of Demeter's tier 2 boons. Of course, we go for the fish because why wouldn't I go for the fish? I'm still a casual runner at the end of the day. Speed runs and challenge runs and gimmick runs are fun, but I still have a whole bunch of meta progression to unlock still. It is crazy, the replay value of Hades. It is just so incredible, and I never get tired of doing runs. Like, I am over 120 runs into the game now, and I am just not tired of it at all. We get it on the dash. That's 30 damage from 24. Not amazing, but it's good. Hammers are completely useless in a dash-only run, so we completely ignore the hammer chambers every chance there's something better to get from them. The only reason I would take a hammer would likely be... One second, let's see if there's any dialogue here.
I'm grateful, Zagreus.
The main reason why... Oh, there's Arctic Blast. That's what we want. Applying 10 stacks of chill causes a blast, clearing the effect, but does 90 damage in an AoE.
I could have sworn I told you never to take the power of the sea for granted, little Hades. It seems the time for words is over then.
So that will up our damage significantly, and it's going to be the core of our build for a while that kind of carries the run. It's, again, mind you, it's not a giant damage up, but it is a damage up. And keep in mind that it is affected, as far as I know, by Ruthless Reflex, so it's not always going to be 90 damage, it's going to be even more. And you just see there, the AoE on that burst is huge, so it makes clearing runes a lot faster, a lot more reliable. As far as hammers go, the only reason we still take hammers is to keep them from showing up in sticks later, or another boon could be more beneficial to us. Hammers can show up in sticks and they'll take up one of the chambers, and I may not want that. It also kind of stops them from showing up later. So basically, if the option is between, say, HP and a hammer, I might choose a hammer then. I still might choose the HP early on just to improve our survivability, but as you can see, getting Arctic Burst just makes things a lot easier on the run fairly early, like clearing swaths of enemies, because it's funny, when they explode they apply shield, so you can kind of have a chain reaction going from this. It's pretty nice. But I think that's kind of the long story short, and I wouldn't exactly call it short, we're 10 minutes of rambles in, but that's the idea of the build, so the rest is kind of just enjoying it. So in the meantime, what can I talk about while we do this? I suppose it will be largely just a matter of what funny stories do I have to tell? I guess I'll start with today's story. So I just had kind of thematically appropriate. I just went on a very chilling excursion myself. And by chilling, I mean I went for like a 40-minute walk out in like 20-degree weather, which this is going to sound kind of insane for anyone who lives in the warmer climates. And I do acknowledge that I might be a little bit of an outlier here, but we've had one of the warmest days in weeks yesterday. It was, I think, 19 degrees outside with a 9-mile-an-hour wind. So for me, that was very comfortable, which is, Kiwi would just say is insane.
All right, no need to fight about this any longer, don't you think, nephew? Here, take my blessing like you should have in the first place.
Kiwi exists in a constant state of being cold, so, yeah. As much as I'd like to take Tidal Dash, we're committed to our build. We take Ocean's Bounty here. Ocean's Bounty is still really good because it increases the number of coins we get, which means we can afford more boons from the store and hopefully get something like a Zeus boon, because we want to be able to stack as much Zeus and Demeter as possible here. We go for the Demeter room, of course, because we still have at least Killing Freeze yet, if not her legendary, and whatever tier 2 boons we need to set up for that legendary. But yeah, Arctic Burst really helps once you get it to make this run a lot more reliable and have a much better time of dealing both damage in Tartarus especially, and dealing with AoE mobs, or dealing AoE damage beyond your dash. Anyway, so points. Long story short, like our weather has been in the single digits to negatives for a while now. Gotta love winter in this area. I'm not gonna like doss myself here, but no, I'm in the northern climates, if you will. And it's rough. It can be rough. Our water froze, and so we have to leave our water running overnight from our faucets, or the pipes freeze, and then we can't use water. And you do not want your pipes to freeze because they can back up and cause like internal damage. I don't know enough to really understand it. I know enough to say I don't want to risk it. All right, so we take Frozen Touch here, or we reroll. I forget. I'm once again checking to see what do we need as a precursor to her Winter Harvest. So we have Ravenous Will, we have Arctic Blast, which are two of the precursors. Killing Freeze is the single best boon we can get beyond her legendary at this point. So I probably reroll, hoping for it because we have higher rarity. I'm debating between Frozen Touch and rerolling. What do I take? I don't remember. I reroll. Okay, that makes sense. And we just get a lower tier Killing Freeze, but Killing Freeze nonetheless. So we get more damage now, which is great. Here's an instance where I probably go for the coin because it lets me. I only have 79 coin. I want to be able to afford another boon from the shop if it's offered, and the coin runes offer a minimum of 100 coin. Since I'm not running convenience fee, that more than enough puts me over for a god boon, a palm at worst. Anyway, so yeah, so we're contending with really cold weather, but I have always been a bit of a freak of nature when it comes to cold weather. I have on record friends from undergrad. I went to undergrad in a northern climate area as well. People at undergrad, because of how involved I was with kind of tutoring organic chemistry back in undergrad, I was a bit notorious. I had been making kind of educational videos on how to do organic chemistry problems and things of that nature. So most of the class who was taking organic chemistry at the time knew who I was, and that organic chemistry class was like 900 students strong. Like basically every student going a STEM route had to take Orgo. So I was a recognizable face, and people knew me as the guy who was walking around. 1 second.
I got the message that you need assistance, Zagreus.
I gained,
this one's on me, Zag.
let's say, infamy around the campus as the guy who was eating ice cream in shorts in the middle of a snowstorm on a bench outside the library. like, and this was a repeatable occurrence. I often treated myself to ice cream after a weekly course, so people kind of knew to expect it, and they would always be like, "How's the weather, Jeff?" I'm like, "I'm loving it." I'm like, "Great day for ice cream." Like, as a joke, yes, but also like it didn't bother me. And Kiwi, when she found this out about me, was mortified because Kiwi is the exact opposite. She is the sort that wears sweaters in the winter. Also, I'm just gonna say Thanatos versus Demeter dash only run really rough. Very hard to pull out the win, but if I recall, I think I actually manage it here because all the enemies end up stacking up on top of each other, and Arctic Burst does work. Like, look at this, we're barely beating Theseus. I realize if I'm gonna get this, I need to focus the low HP enemies, and thankfully he just starts spawning in all of these little numbskulls, so it is very easy to just get all of these kills. And on paper, if someone placed a bet, will Jeff beat Thanatos with a dash only build out of Demeter dash? I think 9 times out of 10 you'd bet no, there's no way you can do that. It's not possible. But look at how badly we beat him. We get over 40 kill. We get over a 30 kill. We get like a 30 kill lead there. Incredible. Regardless, so yeah, I've always been that weird kid who just doesn't feel cold. I got my parents in trouble for that as a kid, actually, because I would show up to the bus after having showered, so my hair was wet, and in like freezing weather, my hair wasn't just wet, it was forming icicles to the point I could snap pieces of hair off, which I always thought was hilarious as a kid. But I refused to wear a jacket as a kid because I didn't use my locker in school. All of my classes, I had the worst schedule. I had one class on one end of the school, another class on the other end of the school. We only had 5 minutes to get between classes, and I had to like power walk to get to these classes on time. So I never had time to stop at my locker outside of maybe lunch period.
Hope I didn't keep you
and
waiting, ladies.
So I So if I was gonna wear a jacket to school, I would have to bring that jacket with me to every class, and it was just so inconvenient, so cumbersome, and it would just make me overheat during class because my school's heating system was way too good. It was really well insulated, but that also made summers were like deadly. I was dying in my chair trying not to die of heat. I am actually prone to heat stroke, believe it or not. I have experienced it more than once, and it's not a fun experience. It led to my first ever migraine headache, which was terrible. Couldn't see straight. I was like just crying on the couch until I finally fell asleep. It was a miserable experience. Anyway, I'm tangenting all over the place. The point I want to make is I'm a freak of nature. I don't feel cold the right way. Kiwi doesn't feel heat the right way. We balance each other out very well. She runs too cold, I run too hot. She cools my body temperature, I heat her up. It's great. It's the best cuddle partner I could ask for. Anyway, but the point being is I took like a 40-minute walk out in town to do some errands. I went to the post office, I went to the bank, I went to the DMV. Thankfully, I live in a little town, and having grown up in kind of in a city-ish area originally and now moving to a more rural setting, can I just say for a brief moment how wonderful a rural DMV is? Growing up, when I was getting my driver's license, I had to go through the awful experience that I think a lot of people have to go through, where you go to the DMV and you wait online for like an hour.
Symphony has failed me, has she?
And you get to that desk and they hand you the paperwork that you need to fill out until you go to the back, fill the paperwork out, get back online. They don't wait for you to fill it out because, I mean, some people just take forever to fill out that paperwork. So then you have to wait another hour. You have to like spend some amount of time trying to figure out what you need to put on that paperwork, and then you go back to the end of the line and wait another hour. And by the time you get there, back at the desk, they're like, "We're closed for the day. Come back tomorrow." Going from that to a DMV where at most the longest line I've ever seen at the DMV was like 3 people, and usually that means at most like a 5-minute waiting time, is just so wonderful. Like, I have realized that it is better, like, I think Kiwi and I are kind of set on the fact that eventually we are going to move from this location probably to a more, at minimum, suburban area, because there's just not a lot to do out here. And while we aren't like the sorts that really go out for entertainment, it's better for convenience work. Like, we have to drive a minimum of half an hour, if not an hour, to access most of the common shopping centers. Like, we have like the cute mom and pop stores in the area, but we don't have like, if we want to go to Best Buy, for example, we need to go an hour's drive. If we want to go to a movie theater, we have to drive for half an hour. If we want to get shoes or clothing, it's at least half an hour, if not more. So it's kind of inconvenient to be so far out on the outskirts of society. And I honestly, like, my occupation requires that I drive to get to work, like minimum of a half an hour, typically an hour or two to get to my locations. So moving closer will help. But I digress. Where did I come from this? Basically, so the nice thing is we have most of the important amenities nearby, and I have learned the wonders of Amazon shopping and online shopping, which Kiwi has been doing since she was a wee lass, if you will. I had never done it until I got into a relationship with Kiwi, and I mean, I do feel like I still favor doing things in person because I can look at the product, assess it a little bit more closely than just going based on reviews of people who I don't know or don't necessarily trust, especially for those more niche products like things that only have a couple reviews on them that I'm picking based on price rather than functionality sometimes. Regardless, I digress. The point being, I went on a walk around town to go to several of the amenities I needed for getting some errands done, and I'm just walking outside in 20-degree weather, loving it and being like, oh, this is so much better than the last time I went for a walk where I couldn't feel my nose, my feet, my hands, and still had to walk for another 15 minutes. And I found that my threshold is, once we get into the single digits, that's where my like threshold is finally met, where I'm like, okay, this is getting a little too cold to function. But before then, I'm like, if it's in the teens, especially if it's in the 20s or above, like my golden range is, my ideal temperature is probably in the 60s, realistically speaking, or probably kind of high 50s, I imagine. But I can very comfortably exist in sub 40-degree weather for a very long time. Other kind of cold themed memories. I mean, as a kid, I loved digging tunnels and digging burrows. Like, if I ever went to a beach, I hated going in the water. And I think I've told some very sordid stories about bad beach experiences, between getting stung by a jellyfish and on my birthday, mind you, along with 2 other members of my family, and the time I just sat at the shore, kind of dozed off a little bit, and then woke up with 26 pounds of sand trapped in the lining of my pants.
Nephew, I want you to go and show that surly Hades everything you're made of. And I've arranged for you a little bit of help along the way.
But I absolutely adore burrowing into the sand and burying myself up to the head until the lifeguard comes over and says, you know, this is really unsafe. And I'm like, yes, but it's fun. Okay, so I reroll here because, like I said before, I wanted to get lightning reflexes. So now we have some extra damage on the dash. Sets us up for getting jolted damage, which will up our DPS pretty substantially. Not to mention, we get, from there, we can get his legendary. Especially if we get high voltage and double strike. We would need either high voltage or double strike. Between the two, double strike obviously does more damage. High voltage improves our AoE, so either is honestly fine for a dash only build. And then static discharge jolt, the cursed jolt, it just does so much damage. We go for a Hermes room here, of course, because again, more dashes means more DPS. Alternatively, if we can get rush delivery or bad news, those are also potential DPS boosts, so they're all pretty good options. Even just having a little bit more dodge chance increases our survivability. Hyper sprint is good for keeping us alive because it gives us sturdy. Since we're always going to be dashing, we're always going to have that 30% damage reduction that it gives. And it sets us up for rush delivery. So hyper sprint is honestly the best boon we can see here.
You ready, boss?
Aside from his increased number of dashes. So I get hyper sprint. I consider re-rolling here. Do I? I feel like I do. Okay, I do re-roll.
Grateful here.
Because I'm thinking about what would be great here, and greater haste into rush delivery would just up our overall damage. I think I probably should have just taken hyper sprint there, but there weren't a lot of things left for me to want to reroll for, so I didn't mind it so much. And of course, we're going for more Demeter. At this point, all we want from Demeter, because we have all the tier 2s we care about, is we want her legendary. And I won't spoil how that turns out, because her legendary is pretty funny. Anyway, so the reason why I go into this caveat about tunneling is because there was one time I had my hometown where I grew up had a pretty long block. We weren't like the longest block. We were kind of, if you picture the letter I or the letter H, maybe we were the center of that H. We were a short street perpendicular to 2 longer streets. But nonetheless, it was a pretty long block, all things considered. And I dug a burrow, or rather a tunnel. Okay, so I think I probably take Rare Crop here, because if it hits the dash, it would be awesome. It ends up hitting Ravenous Will and Lightning Reflexes, so more damage on Lightning Reflexes is good. The damage buff from Ravenous Will can't actually be benefited from, because I can't use my cast, so it's kind of useless. The only thing Ravenous Will gives us is damage reduction, but it's always 10%. The only thing that scales with rarity and level is the damage increase, I believe. I may be flipping that, but I believe that is the case. This room was miserable. Oh my goodness. All of these projectiles.
Skelly, help. Don't need to tell me twice.
I decided Skelly was very necessary here because I could not dodge all the projectiles while also doing reasonable damage, and the sort that spawn. So the biggest counter to dash only builds, as you'll see, is enemies that spawn terrain damaging effects. So these Drakens that are dropping lava on the ground, because your dashes do not block that damage, or if you dash onto it, you're going to get stuck on it before you can dash again, and you're going to get hit pretty hard. Anyway, back to the story. So what did I want to say? So I dug a tunnel in the kind of, so you know how when plows come through, they push all the snow onto the side of the street? It literally doesn't matter what I take here, so I just pick a random boon. So you know how when plows come through, they push all of the snow onto the side of the street? I used that built up of snow and dug a tunnel from halfway through the block to the end of the street. And I end up
In the name of Hades.
being surrounded in cold ice so long that I've never seen this before, but apparently...
Got anything else?
Okay, so we get an epic level hyper sprint here. Unfortunately, we don't get greater... I was re-rolling for rush delivery, but this epic level hyper sprint is awesome because it lasts for 0.7 seconds, gives us sturdy, gives us a ton of movement speed so we can reposition very well. It was a very nice pickup.
All right, Lenny, let's have it out between us then.
But sadly, no damage boost that rush delivery could have given us, or more dashes, which would have been the probable most ideal situation, I suppose. But either way, it's definitely not something we're going to complain about. Anyway, so while I was digging this tunnel for so long that I think my multiple parts of my body went numb to the point that I didn't realize they were like beyond reasonably cold anymore. And when I get into the house, I obviously go to take a warm shower to kind of help regain body heat. And I see on my legs, like from thighs down, I have giant hives. Like, I assume they're just extreme goosebumps. I don't know how to interpret it, but my legs got so cold that they developed hives. Like, I had some sort of almost weird allergic reaction to being so cold. My legs were damp and frozen, and my mom was certainly concerned, and I'm like, this is cool. Look, I have bumps all over my legs. And my mom is like, is my son dying? And I feel like I think I've addressed in other episodes that I have quote unquote multiple moms. I have my biologic mother, and then I have every person who has taken like a motherly role to keep me from getting myself hurt or injured or killed through my higher education career. Undergrad, I had Tom the mom. Graduate, I had Rebecca, or we call her Raberry. Well, I've had several adoptive moms, and I very much count on them to keep me alive. And now that's Kiwi's job. Kiwi has to fight an uphill battle just to keep Jeff from self-destructing unintentionally or intentionally. Well, I guess maybe the intent isn't self-destruction, but the result is very obviously going to be self-destruction. However you want to interpret that. I have people who are desperately fighting to knock some sense into me when I am so oblivious to common sense decisions. Regardless, I have always been the sort to enjoy the cold weather, perhaps a little bit too much, or maybe tolerate it is the right word. I don't think I actually finished the high school story, so I was trying to make a point that I refuse to wear a jacket in the winter because as soon as I get on the bus, it's really hot. As soon as I get to the school, it's really hot. The only time it's at all any degree of cold was waiting at the bus stop. So I would go to the bus stop in freezing weather in the snow and not be wearing a jacket. And local moms and parents would look at me and see a kid not wearing a jacket in the middle of winter and be like, oh, his parents aren't caring about him. They're going to let him freeze to death. We should report him to the school board and be like, maybe child protective services should be involved.
Enough.
And then, so I started not wearing a jacket. I started, I quote unquote wore a jacket. What I did was I brought a jacket, but then tied it around my waist so people could see, okay, I have the option of wearing a jacket. My parents aren't not providing for me. I am actively choosing not to wear a jacket because I figured it's the best of both worlds. It keeps people from being angry at my mom, and instead redirects it towards me. Why is this kid a total idiot? Is he trying to hurt himself? Is he trying to make a point? The answer being no. Well, okay, yes, a little bit. I am an idiot, but I am not. It's not my parents' fault that I'm an idiot. Or maybe it is. Genetics are a weird thing. I don't know. I think the reason why I have such a high cold tolerance is actually kind of how I grew up. The room that I lived in as a kid growing up was a corner room that also sat over our garage. So I was surrounded on 4 out of 6 sides of a cube by either a wall that connects to the outdoor. So, 1 second. Okay, we are picking up where we left off. Sorry about that. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, there was a point where I went to bed in the middle of the episode since I wasn't even intending this to be a real upload, but it just went so well that I wanted to share it. So this is the morning after I accidentally already started trying to record this a little bit. Here I'm just selling boons, but having watched a little bit of this playthrough, I do notice that the second half seems to be a little bit laggy. If I had to guess, sometimes when I leave my computer on overnight to render and upload videos, it ends up being a bit laggier in the morning. So forgive me if the frame rate has dropped a little bit from the second half. It may not be notable. I think it's notable, but if you're using these to fall asleep or as like a second monitor sort of episode, you may not even notice it. So that's my hope, Kiwi. I hope this isn't going to bother you too much. It'll bother me as someone who wants kind of a bare minimum of quality in his videos, and granted that threshold is low overall, it's still
so green.
It's still enough to bother me. I end up taking the HP here, of course, because as I mentioned before, hammers really don't offer much. Realistically speaking, maybe it would have been better to take the hammer, but honestly, I think we're at the point in the run where I don't really need anything else. Everything else is just icing on the cake. Again, double strike, high voltage, splitting bolt from Zeus. Static discharge being the most important boon, which I think we already got, perhaps. I forget. And of course, I really want Demeter's legendary, because for some reason, every time I go for a Demeter build and hope to see her legendary, I never get it, and it's really frustrating. But we'll see if I get that or not in this run, and what happens if I do. Regardless, I back to the story that we had started on. So as a kid, I grew up in a room that was surrounded by the attic on the top, the garage below, and then 2 of the rooms, because I was a corner room, were just directly a wall between me and outdoors. And my bed was right next to a window. So there were only 2 sides to that room, a roughly square-shaped room, that were surrounded by other rooms that had heat. And as a result, my room was always much colder than anywhere else in the house. And so I kind of got used to just being cold, or certainly, if not cold, like surrounded by cold. But I grew acclimated to it. I like to sleep with my wall. My bed was right up against the wall by the window, and I would push the mattress as close to that wall as I could, so I could actually lean my body against the wall and have it be cooled. So I don't know. I don't think it's exclusively because of my room. It probably had some influence, but I think it's a weird, my body is weird sort of thing. And I acknowledge that I've always been a degree of overweight, but even when I was my leanest after doing my my month abroad in Germany, where I was like 50 pounds lighter than I currently am, I was still doing that when I got back. Like, I was still air conditioner on at all times to blasting it at lowest temperature possible, and like sleeping with the windows open in the winter sort of thing. I don't think it was my body weight that was a contributing factor. Maybe my body nonetheless, but not my body weight that I think was the contributing factor to that. I am nonsense, and I accept that reality. I should not enjoy the cold weather nearly as much as I do, but I think most of my coworkers have come to understand that if it's wintertime, the only reason Jeff is wearing a jacket is because he wants to roll around in the snow. And that's basically it. If I go out to shovel, I go out starting in a jacket, but the purpose of that jacket is because I overheat while shoveling, doing physical activity. I start sweating in the snow, and so I put the jacket on the ground and lay in it for a second to kind of cool off. I'm laying in the snow with my jacket just keeping me from getting wet. Like, many people have seen me just like hanging out in the snow to cool down, and they're just like, this guy does not make sense. Here we get a trial between Zeus and Poseidon. Poseidon I really don't care about on this run, but Zeus can always, like I said before, offer a whole lot of other boons that up our damage. So we take it, we get static discharge, which is going to give us a whole bunch of extra damage. We love to see it.
It seems that you require yet one more gentle reminder not to scoff at chances to accept my blessings, little Hades.
And I think at this,
Now remember this.
point my frame rate normalizes maybe.
Did what I had to do.
No, it still looks like it's a little bit slow. It looks better overall. I think my computer's just struggling a little bit because I probably left it on overnight. Maybe I had Dungeon Fighter Online open. Dungeon Fighter Online is one of my favorite MMOs out there. I've been playing it for years, almost 2 decades now, actually. But it has a memory leak issue, and if I don't reset the computer after if I don't close the game after a certain point, it just lags the computer to high hell. Certainly, this was salvageable if I had restarted my computer in the morning, if that's the case. It could also be that I just forgot to close Google Chrome. Ever since Google updated their kind of ad policy that make ad block not work, if I have even a single fan Wikipedia page open, my computer lags to heck and back. I think I need to switch off of Google Chrome and go and switch to Firefox. I've never used Firefox, but Google is losing all goodwill I had towards it because of how awful their change in AdSense has been.
All right, that's quite enough. I take it you've had about enough of that, correct? You're pretty good. So here, why don't you run along?
So there really is nothing I want from Poseidon here other than maybe Sunken Treasure or those sorts of gives you meta progression coin and HP sort of boons. We take his attack because I can sell it for a whole bunch of coin. We see a high tier Demeter and get really excited because here's our chance to get her legendary. Will we get it? Well, first we have to beat the Bull of Minos, so...
Come on, short one. I've been waiting too long for this.
But the funny thing about Asterius is when you're not playing with Forced Overtime and you get 10 stacks of chilled on him, he is just invalidated as a threat. It's really funny. When he starts to charge, you'll see what I mean. Another thing I start to notice about this point in the run, and it's probably in part because of the frame drops, but more so I think it's because of how fast we are moving, the constant in and out throwing of the dashes, and kind of this circling motion that I'm prone to doing when I'm doing these dash runs. I am starting to get motion sickness, and I hope that is not a problem for you, Kiwi, but I got motion sickness from this build a little bit. I'm like, oh, I should not have taken that epic tier hyper sprint. It's actually having a pretty sizable detriment to my overall, like, can I run this run? It's not a matter of, can I survive? Look how slow he is with that stacked up chill. It's really funny to me. It is just, the screen is jerking so rapidly that I am getting nauseous, and I'm like, oh, I might not be able to finish this run because of that. I commit to it, I bite the bullet, I commit to it. I hope that viewership-wise that's not going to be an effect for you, but I have learned if I ever do a dash-only run, I might not take hyper sprint again because as fun as it is, it makes me sick. I think it'll be less of an issue for dash-only runs that don't have a projectile linked to them, so it's really just Demeter's dash that I have to worry about for this, but we are just moving too fast and it is making me motion sick. I'll bite the bullet. I mean, worst case scenario, I can just close my eyes and tell stories. I don't need...
Such strength. The strength of Gilgamesh. Thank you for the battle, short one.
Like, I think until I hear a boon drop, I can probably keep my eyes closed, so...
Till next time, sir.
We'll sit on that idea for now and see what I can get.
Relentless, I accept this message.
I'm happy to see that Palm Blossom hits the dash so we get some more damage, but we're still not seeing what we want. We're not getting Demeter's legendary. She is so incredibly stingy with her legendary. I take Nourish Soul here, I think, or was it her Frozen Chill? I looked away for a second. Whatever it may be. Again, at the end of the day, it doesn't terribly matter.
We're faring well enough, and may you fare the same.
For this, we don't benefit, we don't have any Death Defiances that we lost, we don't attack, so we just take the Hydrolite for the HP it gives. It'll heal us for a fair bit of HP, and we keep going for coin to hopefully set up for things we can purchase in sticks. Anyway, the Flame Chariots are actually fairly easy to deal with this build because you can just dash through them and not get hit. Anyway, what other cold-related stories do I have? I think those are the main ones. Being notorious for eating ice cream on campus, always being shirtless, laying in the snow to cool off. Those are probably the big ones. Oh, I mean, I guess when I talked about shoveling, that's talking about wearing a jacket for when I shovel. That's just assuming I wear a shovel. I refer to a windbreaker as my winter jacket, and everyone just judges me heavily. Because like I said, I'm living in northern climates. Most people here are not well acclimated to the cold. Like, yeah, they deal with it, but I mean, I think I'm an outlier no matter how well I tolerate the cold. I mean, certainly there's a degree of like, this is tolerable cold, but for most people, they still need to wear a jacket, wear gloves, wear a hat or something to keep themselves warm. And I'm just out here wearing gloves to keep my fingers from freezing and shoes. Like those are my bare minimum requirements for handling cold weather, gloves and shoes. because my digits are prone to getting too cold, and my nose, I guess. My nose and ears are the next things to happen, but if I start generating a lot of heat, that's usually not a problem, and I generate heat very easily when I'm physically active, I guess. I am a gross, sweaty guy, Kiwi. I don't know if I should say that out loud on the internet, but it's kind of true, which is why I shower every day, to keep that from being a problem.
Let's see what's in here.
Anyway, we just buy everything from the shop because it literally doesn't matter at this point. And at this point I realize there's still a prophecy to fulfill about the shop. Nothing here that I particularly want to sell. That 30% or that damage reduction by 30% from the high rarity Ravenous Will is quite nice.
Let's be reasonable, no?
Let's see. Are there any other like fun cold stories to tell? I think I'm running out because most of them are all the same theme of Jeff is nonsense. Jeff should not do this by any like bit of logic, but yet he does it anyway. But again, I guess they're fond memories. I guess. Nah, I think I've run out of stories. So what can we tangent off onto from there? My brain is telling me I want to talk about tacos because, of course, I want to talk about tacos. They are my comfort food if ever there was one. That or Mediterranean food. Those are probably my two #1 comfort foods. A nice gyro or a kebab, and then some good tacos. Can't go wrong with those two things. I guess in recent history, we just made a whole pot of lemon, rosemary, and Thai basil chicken and potatoes. The potatoes kind of have the consistency of almost a potato salad. They're chunky. They're on the chunky end of mashed potatoes mixed together with chicken, all infused with a deep flavor of rosemary and lemon that complements it so wonderfully. You mix a whole bunch of thyme in there as well, I believe. Or no, I'm mixing that up with the winter squash risotto we make. We often make those in short order of each other. I guess I'll talk about that in a second, but basically we have a little hydroponic garden for our Thai basil that's just it's starting to come up on its end. It's lasted for 2 years, that basil. The Thai basil grows like a jungle sometimes. And we harvested a bunch to like kind of for plant maintenance and health maintaining. We kind of trim leaves that are starting to flower because those flowers eat a lot of the nutrients from the actual plant, because it's basically trying to reproduce, so it's spending a lot of resources on the flowers to help it reproduce, and that takes away from the leaves that can grow. So we trimmed that basil, put it in, mixed it with a bunch of lemon juice, olive oil, rosemary, and cooked it in a pressure cooker that we've had since Kiwi has had that pressure cooker since I met her. It was something her parents used to use, so she wanted one for herself, I suppose. So that was one of our staple meals through grad school. The other one was the winter squash risotto, which is a combination of butternut squash. We put a lot of thyme in it, I believe, salt and pepper, of course, to season it. And ideally use kind of a thicker rice, like an arborio rice, which you can find at grocery stores, but I usually just settle for the cheaper white rice, and it works just as well. And it's a pretty darn great meal. But both of those we make a large quantity of, and it lasts us for like the full week. Kiwi and I are huge on meal prepping because of work, because of what we had to deal with in grad school, where we had like 1 day off a week, and then we were working from like 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we had no real time to ourselves to actually like take care of ourselves, realistically speaking. So we got in the habit of using our 1 day off to meal prep substantial amounts of food that would last us the week, or even longer if we can freeze it. So that's always been our style. For me, it can sometimes be an issue that leads me to overeating a little bit, but I've learned how to manage that by just making sure that the food never leaves the kitchen. It stays in the kitchen. I make a bowl full of something, and then I bring it to my desk, because if I see food, I eat food. And as long as food isn't within reach, I tend to forget about it, and I can go like a full day without eating, which isn't healthy either. I call it snake meal. I inherited that from another one of our friends who's prone to doing the same thing. But basically, you just eat your entire day's worth of calories in one meal.
Hey, cheers for picking up the tab there, Zach. Now, I cannot exactly pay you back, though I could give you this.
Which was a particularly prevalent strategy of mine back in grad school. We finally get strong drink here, which will give us at least 4% more damage every time we get a fountain. Realistically speaking, that's going to be about 8% damage total between the fountain, between Elysium and Styx, and then the Satyr Sack Chamber. but 8% more damage against Hades is still very welcome.
Attack us if you dare, blackguard. Asterius and I stand ready.
But yeah, so we made a huge thing of chicken and potatoes. I've been very much enjoying mixing it with a little bit of salad, and we also made some fresh baked caraway French bread rolls and rosemary French bread loaves. And I've been
fear you, fiend. Your presence is a stain upon Elysium.
My favorite thing to do right now is toast one of those two forms of bread. Particularly, I think I've been enjoying the rosemary bread because it just synergizes very well with the flavor of the chicken and potatoes. I kind of coat a thin slice of bread that I've toasted with the chicken and potatoes and put a little salad on top with some feta cheese, and I'm just having a great time. It just tastes so good all synergized together like that. My goal here, if I can, is to try and get the two heroes together. It's very hard, so I end up just kind of fighting them separately. I'm not sure who is easier to deal with. I figure Asterius, like Theseus, as long as I don't stand in front of him, he can't really hit me. So I focus down I focus down Asterius here. I think the heroes kind of emphasize that we still don't have amazing single target damage. A lot of our strengths come from lots of enemies dying in close proximity to each other to kind of chain reaction Arctic burst. But nonetheless, we're still doing pretty well. Would love...
Now, filth, are you prepared to be sent screaming back to the hellish darkness?
Would love to see Demeter's legendary at any point, but she is just so darn stingy with that boon, I swear. Anyway, again, I want to emphasize the value of Ruthless Reflex here. 3 dashes is still plenty for most dash-only runs to do a lot of their damage, and that 50% damage up really helps with the early game, and more importantly, that 50% dodge chance just keeps me alive because I am so prone to running face first into things, and dashing through enemy attacks, you constantly have iframes up. It is so easy to reliably get the near misses. Like there's one. So you're constantly in that state of 2 seconds of not taking, or taking 50% chance of not taking damage because you'll dodge. We finally beat Asterius, and we phased Theseus. So I don't think Theseus's shield can block the dash damage, which is quite useful considering we don't really have any other damage against him. So it's just a matter of making sure that I'm constantly dodging him, which isn't hard to do between hyper sprint and just having all the dashes. That doesn't mean I won't get hit, but it means there's a fair chance I don't get hit. And Ruthless Reflex just putting in the work too. Not to mention killing freeze, Demeter's damage over time effect when all chilled foes are afflicted by chilled, putting in work too. It means I can...
That was for you, good shade.
Long story short, we have a lot of sources of damage. I think he died to Jolted there though, because he tried to attack and got shocked from lightning reflexes.
You force me to send Cerberus ahead again.
At this point, again, I don't really have a lot to give up, so I just stick with Palm Blossom because every level on the dash is a little bit more damage. If it hits any of our other boons that we care about, great.
More suffering.
And again, I'm just buying everything from the shop because why not? Even the extra Skelly. I don't think I'm going to use all the Skellies in Styx because I've forgotten to use him a fair bit. I should have used him against the heroes. He would have been very helpful there. I did not. Oh well. But that's life. I mean, that's kind of the cooking roundup. I seem to talk about food a lot. I mean, that makes sense. It's a big part of my life. I'd say I spend more of our entertainment budget on fun things to cook than video games at this point, which is kind of crazy. We see Demeter. We want to take Demeter here. I'm just debating if I should take it now or hold out. It's our only shot at Demeter. It's a low tier Demeter. We do not have rerolls, so there's a reasonable chance that I do not get the boon I want. What would have been ideal is wasting my money on getting a cast and a special from literally any other god, because then I could have potentially... She would have had fewer things to offer because she could offer a trade for her boon, but it's a low chance of that happening. So if I had really wanted to see her legendary and have the best chance of getting it, I should have done these other rooms first, and I recognize that in hindsight. But I think I was thinking about how I might want to just spend my money on the Palm rather than any of the other boons, or to save up for Hermes. I still don't think that's a good explanation for it was just a bad judgment call. But as you can see, I once again, despite trying to get it, did not get Demeter's legendary. We will get it one day. I swear I will get it one day, and I feel like that will be a fun build. Like, we've already, coming up, we're going to have a fun build where I run Aphrodite's legendary on the Lucifer rail, which just attacks really rapidly. I would love to do that with Demeter and try and get the same thing going. Whether it happens or not is entirely up to the fates, I suppose. We'll see. But
It's no use.
we're making good work of this. I think, like I said, like, thanks to Lightning Reflexes, Jolted, all the tier 2s we got from Demeter, we have a surprisingly reasonable amount of damage despite being a dash-only run. It's still not great single target damage, but it's not terrible either. Like, watch how I kind of...
To me, Skelly. It's time to get beat up.
I can reasonably put in the work. And because I have a very easy way of getting near misses from this, this giant snake stone... Man, Skelly got melted by those lasers. But yeah, I think I wouldn't say this is my favorite dash-only run, but it wasn't as bad as I expected this to be terrible. That's why I like even was humoring a let's just do a litmus test, see if this is even viable sort of thing. Like I in terms of who I think has the best dash-only run, easily Poseidon or Ares, I'd say. Because Poseidon synergizes amazingly well just with his own boons. Knocking enemies into walls does a ton of damage. All the tier 2s that increase that means you have a ton of AoE, a ton of base damage on trash mobs, and then if you can get his boon that makes you deal more damage to bosses, he does decent against bosses too. And then, plus, if you get Sea Storm, you can duo with Zeus, and as we've said, Zeus's boons just scale extremely well with a dash-only run, or, well, with any run, as long as you get Zeus on top of Zeus on top of Zeus. And I would say he is better than a Zeus dash-only run because Zeus's dash-only runs, well, you have all the boons that you could get from Zeus on Sea Storm with Poseidon's dash, which has the higher base damage, and all the tier 2s of Poseidon. So I think the strongest dash-only run overall is absolutely Poseidon, if not Ares, because like Zeus and like Poseidon, Ares has a lot of boons that kind of stack the effect of his dash, and the Ares dash-only run that I did was scarily strong. So I think those are, like, I would say Poseidon and Ares are the number, like, let's call him S tier, if you will. Zeus is probably A tier because he's just a weaker version of Poseidon's dash-only run. And then I would say Demeter, she's probably B tier. And in theory, I think Dionysus could do pretty well, so I'd probably put him at B tier. I think Aphrodite is going to be D or F tier. Like, she is going to be rough. And then Artemis does not have a dash that actually does damage. It enhances your dash attack, so you can't do a dash-only Artemis run. And am I forgetting any other gods? I don't think I am. Athena. Oh, ooh, I didn't think about that. Athena dash-only run.
Look, man, I am feeling generous right now, know what I mean? And so he's something extra potent for you. Ought to keep you going for a while longer than you used to there.
Okay, I could see Athena's dash-only run going one of two ways. Either terrible, because the base damage on her dash is awful, and the AoE on her dash is even worse, but it can reflect projectiles. So against any room with enemies like splitters or witches or even Hades himself, if I reflect that damage and get all her boons that increase reflect damage dealt by reflect effects, I could make an argument for her being pretty decent. Aphrodite gets nothing. She has the only boon that she can build that makes her damage increase in any capacity is Sweet Surrender, I think it's called, the one that increases your damage against weakened foes by 15%, or 10% at lowest form, I think. That's it. That's all she gets. And then you have a really low base damage dash after that. It's going to be a slow and painful run. We'll obviously go for Zeus boons to try and round out the build. And oh, I forgot. I was out of rerolls, and I get Hermes here, and I'm just like, give me your extra dashes, please. And he doesn't. It's so sad. So
the prince persuades the underworld's ferocious guardian to move aside.
Like, I think it goes without saying, having more dashes on a dash-only run is your single greatest source of DPS that you can get from Hermes, except for maybe bad news. And here we prove that I got every tier 2 prerequisite to Demeter's legendary, and she just refused to give it to me. What, like, I always call her the crunchy, crusty, cranky old lady god. And I maintain that she is, to a T, the mother-in-law character of this game, if nothing else.
The realm needs some adjustment still.
Remember, I can always get here much, much faster than you.
Now let me be clear, having said that, this does not describe your mom at all, Kiwi. Your mom is a very bubbly, friendly personality, kind of like my mom. But there is kind of a stereotype to the in-laws, I think. It always seems like, at least in common like media sources that I have indulged in, the in-laws are kind of the thing to be dreading when they visit. I'm glad that my in-laws are not that way. Regardless, I don't know what to say beyond that. I think theory crafting future dash-only builds, which I am going to do a dash-only run for every god. I promise you that, Kiwi. We're more than halfway done at this point, I believe. But I have saved the worst for last, I am pretty sure. I do want to try another Ares dash-only run, though, because it was so strong. I would love to see it. I would love to try it again. Because it was funny. It was fun. It was funny. I would love to do it again. Anyway, I don't know what else to expect from this run other than just a solid damage over time on Hades. We're already about halfway through the phase 1. You've likely seen what the full potential of this build is outside of getting Demeter's Legendary, which, again, it's not outright going to carry a run, nor would her duo with Zeus Cold Fusion, but it would up our damage, and it would effectively make these bosses have, or all the enemies that we encounter have 10% less max HP, because they just get we call it an execute in a lot of games. Once they get past a certain point, they are guaranteed to die, or the damage that you deal as they have less HP increases. But you can basically consider it that the way it works is when the foe is chilled and they reach 10%, they shatter is what they describe it as, and deal AoE chilled damage to nearby foes. Like, imagine that comboed with Arctic Burst if we had gotten it earlier in the run. I bet that would have been incredible. It actually makes me think maybe the best Demeter build for her legendary would be something that can do AoE. I think the best way to probably do that would be triple beam, a combination of triple beam and piercing beam on the rail with Lucifer, probably. I think that would probably be the best way to do it. Alternatively, I guess you could do it with Blitz Disc. Blitz Disc is an AoE, but you need enemies to position close to each other. Or you could go with the bow, because the bow pierces with its shot, but it's not a huge AoE either unless you get like triple or twin shot, and twin shot doesn't really increase the AoE either. I think, and it doesn't attack nearly as fast as the rail does. Gauntlets could work for applying fast, but gauntlets don't have a lot of AoE either. So yeah, I think theory crafting it would have to either be the Blitz Disc on the shield, or it would have to be the rail with Lucifer. You could make it work with Eris as well. It just wouldn't be as much because Lucifer gets 20 shots before it runs out, and it hits pretty fast. Plus it's just nice to have the special out to do extra damage. I'm finding that I'm really enjoying running Lucifer. I wasn't a fan of it when I first played the game, but the more I run it, the more I'm enjoying it. I think as a whole, that's kind of my opinion of the rail. Hestia is amazing, Eris is really strong, and Lucifer, honestly, I think I prefer Lucifer to Eris in terms of what I find most fun to play, because I've had some really fun Lucifer builds, Super Soaker, Merciful End. Not that you can't do Merciful End on Eris, oh my goodness, you can do Merciful End on Eris. But I don't know, I think maybe it's just because it's a laser, it looks prettier. The reload, the sound design of Lucifer I like a bit more too, and the giant AoE explosions from popping its specials is just really satisfying.
Skelly, help. Here you go.
So
Return immediately to your post, you wretch.
I summoned Skelly here with the hope of seeing
Such disrespect from you.
his custom dialogue with Hades for if we beat him. I admittedly kind of messed that up because I summoned him into a bunch of lasers again. I think that's the third time I've done that. No, it's the second time I've done that this run, but still, Skelly gets melted.
You stubborn. You shrug off death as though it means nothing to you.
And so I feel a little bit bad about just letting Skelly get melted.
Done, boy.
But there we go. Demeter dash only run. And again, I emphasize it's a dash only run as how we get our damage out. It's not the only source of our damage. If we did a Demeter the only source of our damage was dash only from Demeter, we'd be here all day. The point is, can we build around the dash and still make it work? And I think it's a proof of concept. Like, I've done boomless runs, as close to boomless runs as I can do on this channel. It's a gimmick build, you know? We're trying to have fun. Is there a way to make this starting point of a build viable? As far as what carried the run, of course, Mistral Dash, Arctic Blast, Killing Freeze are going to be our big sources of damage. Static Discharge from Lightning Reflexes, activating Double Strike. If we had gotten Zeus's Legendary, that would have been awesome, but we didn't strictly need it. Ravenous Will and Hyper Sprint kept us alive very well. So I'm just trying to figure out what makes the most sense to honor here. All things said, 80 win streak, not bad. 112 full clears total, certainly probably the longest run we've had on the channel, admittedly, which isn't a surprise. It starts off slow, and it kind of plateaus after a certain point. But for a 40-minute run,
Nix's power.
we proved that you can beat this game with Demeter's Dash only.
Once more, tenacious Zagreus achieves his lofty goal. And just as every time before, except with some sort of new twist of fate, perhaps, he goes a little distance, then he dies. No!
Alright, so let's go ahead and do our house roundup and call it a day. Again, I'm sorry that I had to record this in post. It wasn't even intended to be a legit run for the channel. It became a very legit run. So I ended up keeping it.
Looks like you have everything under control. Nice work, Hypno.
In general, I like to avoid kind of splitting episodes in half across the day because it just resets my brain.
Tarry longer than you need to, lad.
And the audio quality, the positioning. There are a lot of things that'll feel kind of inconsistent between the episodes.
I ever tell you you're the best son that a mother's ever had?
See the lag that happened. So it looks like the lag has fixed here, so.
Made a hollow mockery of Theseus that time.
Sorry for the frame drop in the latter half of this episode.
Oh, hello, Zagreus.
It may just be that I need to up the bitrate on my recording software. I should check and see if that got reset, actually.
It's got on the board.
Because I remember how much I used to have a ton of screen tearing issue when I was running Celeste and Hollow Knight back when I started this channel. So I should see. I should double check those settings. I assume that most of my settings carried over when I updated the drivers and software, aside from the noise gates, which for whatever reason got reset. But I should definitely not have drank that in retrospect. Cause of death, Hemlock. Ooh, that is a brutal death. Hemlock is extremely poisonous, kills you in like half an hour, causing like neurologic shutdown, I think. I forget if it makes it like turns off your respiratory system, or I forget exactly what it does, but I know it is like a very quick death. And it can be really scary if you like live in an area where hemlocks grow and you have like pets that wander the area into the environment.
Use a good smack in a jar from you right about now.
Like I will always say, like people say good fences make good neighbors, but they also protect. They very much protect, especially in this kind of area where you can have all kinds of gross things growing. Anyway, Kiwi, with all that said, I hope you've enjoyed watching, and if you're awake, I hope this is helping you fall asleep. If you're sleeping, I hope you're sleeping well. I love you, and I will see you in the next one.